strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2020, and we continue to be confined. Lucky for me, I'm the only one in this studio, so I'm still social distancing. I can't touch any of you out there, so you're safe. We have a great show today. This is an advanced nutrient therapy based show. We're going to be talking about the role of nicotinamide, vitamin B3, nicotinic acid, and it may be something that can be used to treat certain types of eye diseases that result from the development of fibrotic tissue with Dr. Tim Blenkinsop. I have to say that a couple times, I'll get it right. And but before we do that, we have to thank our title sponsor, none other than Legendary Foods. Right now, Legendary Foods has a special. Since we are all stuck in our homes and we're eating, you can eat stuff that isn't going to make you fatter. Of course, they have fantastic nut butters and also seasoned nuts, seasoned almonds that are just unbelievable. Their nut butters have no added sugar, but yet they taste decadent. One of my favorites is the blueberry cinnamon bun. Unbelievable, made with a combination of cashew and almond butter. But they are the best. If you go to eatlegendary.com, you can order some of their products. And of course, the Tasty Pastry, which has become a favorite around the country today because it's basically a Pop-Tart, but it's a healthy Pop-Tart. It has 9 grams of high leucine protein, less than 1 gram of sugar, 3 to 4 grams of impact carbohydrates. It is vegan. It's great stuff. It's a fantastic product. And you can get those at eatlegendary.com. If you buy $100 worth of product or more and use the code RELIEF15, RELIEF15, you'll save $15 off your order. Show them some love. They are our title sponsor. And without further delay, let me hide some of these images and bring my guest on today, Dr. Timothy Blenkinsop. How you doing, Dr. Blenkinsop?
Great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, this is so, my audience knows I've been doing the show for 14 years. It'll be 15 years. Actually, this is the longest running health and fitness podcast in the world. Can you believe that? It's amazing.
Yeah, I saw those numbers. Very impressive.
But everybody knows that I started out going to school to study optometry. So the eye has a very, very special interest for me. So this study, what studies preceded this that made you think we need to find out more about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really started during my postdoc. One of the things that I wanted to do was see if I can culture certain cell types of the eye from human cadaver donors. And I was struggling quite a lot. And luckily for me, there was this great paper in 2009 on the use of nicotinamide to differentiate stem cells into certain cell types of the eye. And so I figured, why not try it during my dissections and cultures? And it turns out to have worked and helped greatly. And it was so impressive. I needed to better understand what the mechanisms behind this was. So I continued to study it.
It's funny. We don't talk about the things that differentiate stem cells. We talk about stem cells. And people are actually going out and getting stem cell injections. But without things like vitamin B3 or real active vitamin A, retinol, we don't see the type of tissue coming from these stem cell therapies. And the truth is, we have stem cells in our body as part of the repair system in our body, but they don't always repair things because they lack the differentiators. So B3 is one of them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that really segues very well into the work that I do. During my postdoc, that's exactly what the group that we studied was discovering. nicotinamide could help differentiate these cells. And in the lab of Dr. Sally Temple, we discovered a subpopulation of retina cells that had stem cell characteristics. And we continue to study that. And these stem cells can differentiate into good cells, and they can differentiate into cells that could lead to damage of the eye. And that's exactly what I was studying with this study.
So this type of an eye disease, right? It is a form of disease, can strike people just from aging or trauma, or actually the one that I found most interesting, because we have such a large population of type 2 diabetics. This is something that happens to their eyes, this fibrotic development, and we're going to get into how it works, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So as we age, what we do to our bodies has an impact on how our cells respond, and that includes diabetes. And just the aging process itself leads to wear and tear on our body. And there's a part of our eye called the vitreous body, and it's the gelatinous part of our eye. And as we age, it starts to shrink. And that pulls on the different other parts of the eye, including the retina, which is the light sensing part of the eye. And this, once that happens, it could lead to tearing, retinal tearing. And these little retinal tears can induce this wound healing response, and which a wound healing response is good. But over time, if this continues to reoccur, that could lead to a chronic state of wound healing and an exacerbation of this fibrotic growth. And that's what happens as we age. We see higher increased incidence of these fibrotic growths, or what we call epiretinal membranes, surrounding the retina. And those epiretinal membranes can contract. And as you can imagine, contraction on the retina, which is it's a part of your brain that's sticking out of your skull. And if you are to start to contract on that tissue, very sensitive, delicate tissue, it leads to retinal detachment and vision loss.
And I was thinking of an analogous to if you have a movie screen and all of a sudden you start having wrinkles in it. You know, you have something on the back pulling this way and something on the side pulling this way, and all of a sudden the image becomes distorted because the plane is no longer flat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's as if imagine your comforter, just pulling your comforter off of your bed and creating all those folds. That's exactly what happens to the retina.
Yeah. Now, I also want to say to the audience that's listening and watching live that this research may not be exclusive to just the eye. So what we're going to be talking about here is a natural process in the body of healing, the development of fibrotic tissue, these new fibers that are designed to repair, whether it's on your surface of your skin or inside your body. This process of the development of fibrotic tissue is a natural process, but it goes awry sometimes, and it gets too aggressive, right?
Yeah, no, that's my understanding, definitely.
Yeah.
And so what typically induces these epiretinal membranes is the secretion of certain inflammatory cytokines. And what we found was there is a whole set of cytokines that get activated when there are retinal tears. And so we conducted a cytokine screen, just asking what do these cytokines do to our cells in culture, in our little in vitro human cultures. And we were able to find that TGF beta and TNF alpha, which are inflammatory cytokines, produce this epithelial to mesenchymal transition. So what's an epithelium? An epithelium is a cuboidal cells collected as a monolayer, and they typically form the borders of regions in our tissues, functional units in our tissues. And the shape is very important for their function. And when these cells get exposed to TGF-beta or TNF-alpha, they change shape and they become more mesenchymal. And this is a type of shape that's more elongated, and it loses the cuboidal shape, and it reduces its barrier function, and that leads to just a degeneration of the function of this monolayer. And so that happens with either TGF-beta or TNF-alpha. And what I found was that when you add TGF-beta and TNF-alpha together, you get something completely different. It's a whole different beast. And that leads to this aggregation of contractile membranes. And we did a previous study in our lab where we were able to show that these aggregates in tissue do in fact contract. Using contraction inhibitors, we could relax these membranes. So they are contraction dependent.
So does it sound like we understand that today inflammation is a critical part of a healthy body, but inflammation is like you deploy it, you fix something, and it goes back. It's like the army, right? But chronic inflammation is when the army has no general directing it, and it just kind of just goes to war with anything that it encounters. And when we look at the diabetic obese model today, we know that these individuals produce a lot of inflammatory cytokines in fat cells and everywhere else. And so is this the problem? Does the whole inflammation and then resolving process go awry, where it's like just inflammation all the time and nothing ever gets resolved?
That's definitely the case in terms of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. With regards to proliferative vitreoretinopathy, where these epithelial cells of the retina really participate, it's typically an acute induction of an inflammation that comes from like the combination of these cytokines coming together to really lead to accelerated growth of this mesenchymal membrane. But I think that ultimately the chronic stress underlying the normal state of a person's homeostasis is like definitely contributes to it.
Right. Okay, I'm going to get this question up here first, and then I've got a backup question. So Victor John Andrew Mispsad is a friend through the show. He's been on the show. He actually did an amazing documentary that you may have heard of, or you would love to watch, I predict, called they call him the blind biohacker. So he's losing his vision, and he did an amazing. Victor, what's the name of the documentary? I'm sorry. Is it called The Blind Biohacker? That's just your nickname from it. But anyway, he asked, could this therapy work for retinitis pigmentosa, the B3, have an effect on that particular condition?
So retinitis pigmentosa could benefit. I haven't studied the effects. When we treat or when we conducted these analyses, we conducted RNA sequencing of the tissue with and without vitamin B3.
Right.
And there's certain gene expression profiles that suggest that nicotinamide could benefit. So retinitis pigmentosa has to do with a number of mutations, and those genes popped up in the RNA-seq data set.
And
it's possible, but it needs to be studied.
That disease is actually a result of the diminishing capacity for the retina to produce rhodopsin and the other, I can't think of the other pigment that's in the retina that actually causes you to see colors, but that's just a depletion of those chemicals, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What about macular degeneration? Is there a fibrotic component to macular degeneration?
Yeah, more and more reports suggest that. And in fact, a previous study where we investigated the impact of nicotinamide on stem cells from patients with macular degeneration suggests that nicotinamide could improve the AMD macular degeneration pathogenesis. And that study discovered a number of epigenetic regulators that it seems nicotinamide drives in order to reduce that AMD pathogenesis. And that includes the histones, but it also includes DNA repair mechanisms.
So Victor's documentary was called My Neuroplastic Adventure. Okay. It's a really good documentary. I know that you'd enjoy it. He's a great individual, and we communicate regularly. Sure. Yeah. So, and then also I need to put this up there. Victoria Vallejo says, my favorite PhD. There you go.
Thank you, Victoria.
So you said that, and then we're going to dig deeper into the study in a second, but you said some things that really piqued my interest. So do the epithelial cells actually differentiate back into mesenchymal stem cells, or the mesenchymal stem cells infiltrate the epithelial layer?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And it's something that we were really curious about ourselves. And so one thing that we should bring up the point is that the retina derives from the neuroectoderm. And so the cell type that we are talking about, the epithelial cell type in the retina, is the retinal pigment epithelium, and those are neuroectoderm derived. And so they should not exhibit a mesenchymal characteristic at all. However, when they are perturbed in particular ways, such as being exposed to TGF-beta and TNF-alpha simultaneously, they do progress through an epithelial to mesenchymal transition. And for most of the time, we thought that was irreversible. And so that once the cells move past a certain level of transition, we cannot revert them back. And with the promising results that we were finding at the very beginning of this study, we thought, okay, so we find that nicotinamide can inhibit the epithelial to mesenchymal transition. What if we start with RPE cells that have undergone an epithelial to mesenchymal transition? Can we now add nicotinamide, and will it be able to revert it back to an epithelial phenotype? And in fact, that's what this study shows, that nicotinamide will reverse epithelial to mesenchymal transition and what is termed a mesenchymal to epithelial transition.
So for my own selfish reasons, and I shared this with you, so I have a scar on my cornea from an accident, an ulcer, and it's cloudy. It's been getting clearer, believe it or not, and I have been taking fairly high doses of nicotinic acid, time release. They use a gum, so it just doesn't hit you fast and make you flush, but it's just pure, plain old, 3-cent nicotinic acid. And I definitely noticed some changes. It baffled me a couple days ago where I actually thought I had my contact lens on and I didn't. I was like, wow, I can see so clear all of a sudden. So would it pay for me to get a sterile B3 raw powder and put it in a buffered aqueous solution and put a drop or two in my eye from time to time?
Well, I'm not a physician. This is not medical advice.
Right. No, I know that. I know. Yeah. But you have to say that. I know. Go ahead.
But who knows? It does seem that nicotinamide this is not specific to the retinal pigment epithelial monolayer. In fact, we did notice that the other epithelial types can respond to nicotinamide.
Yeah, very good. I'm excited now. And of course, Victor says if you need a guinea pig, he's actually using some. He's actually had some peptides made for him at a compounding pharmacy that we both know about, and I think he's also using rhodopsin and a couple other things as well to try to restore and protect, or stop the progression of his own vision problems. So he said he's interested if you want any guinea pigs. So there you go. All right. So let's talk about the research for a moment. So explain how this study was done.
Sure. Well, we start off with human cadaver donors. So people who have passed but have signed on to donate tissue for research, which is very, very valuable. And we try to culture the cells from their donations. And using these cells, we have a human model in the dish. We have an aged cell that has the history that individual lived, so that we can really dig deeper into the human part of the disease, as opposed to animal models, which compared to in vitro, animal models have some advantages because you have the whole organism. You can see how the different parts interact. However, if you just want to nail down to the mechanism, the cellular mechanism, then using the human cells makes more sense. And then you can always follow up with animal models to just confirm that your potential treatments don't create damage in other parts of the body.
And a living being, of some sort, right? Exactly.
Yes. So we took those cells, and then we started to ask if we can just maintain the cells as if they were in vivo, meaning can we keep all the features that we find in vivo in our dish? And so that was something that we spent a lot of time on to make sure that our model really replicates both electrophysiologically, immunohistochemically, the native environment. And once we started to feel confident that we in fact have a relatively robust model in vitro, then we started to treat our in vitro model with parts of the disease that have been found in the literature. And so that includes these cytokines. So we started to treat these cells, these retinal pigment epithelial cells, with different cytokines that have been associated with fibrotic disease of the eye. And what we found is that a lot of the cytokines can induce the epithelial to mesenchymal transition in these cells. However, the unique combination of TGF-beta and TNF alpha had a particular effect that just drove it to a whole nother level, whereby we didn't just see an epithelial to mesenchymal transition, but we saw a contractility in the dish, and it resembled proliferative vitreous retinopathy so well that we wanted to dig deeper into how these cells transform so aggressively, and what kind of proteins start to be expressed in these cells. And so first off, we started to conduct RNA sequencing. We took the RNA from these cells in different conditions and conducted sequencing of their gene expression. And then we also did chip sequencing, which is chromatin immunoprecipitation sequencing. And that digs into the epigenetics of the cells. We wanted to not only know what genes are changed, but we wanted to know how the epigenetic landscape changes. And I know you are very interested into the epigenetic changes that occur. And so I'm sure your audience is well aware that the epigenetic landscape orchestrates which genes are expressed and when. And nicotinamide and the NAD pathway is very well known to be an epigenetic repair system that makes sure that it is behaving in the proper way and is capable of responding to the stimulus in the correct manner. And so from those sequencing and epigenetic analyses, we found certain pathways that were changed. And that included a lot of wound healing pathways, a lot of angiogenesis pathways, a lot of mesenchymal and contractile pathways were pulled up. And so in our previous paper, we did a comparison between with and without nicotinamide, and also a pathway came up, which is TGF-beta pathway. And so we thought, okay, we're connecting these dots here from these different studies. Perhaps nicotinamide could positively affect these pathways that are being turned on when TGF-beta and TNF-alpha are surrounding the cells. And in fact, nicotinamide did prove to be able to do just that. And so we are really interested in understanding which genes nicotinamide was able to turn on, and what pathways are essential for this reversion back to an epithelial phenotype. And some of the proteins actually have to do with mitochondrial repair proteins. And so we do think that the mitochondria are playing a big role in how nicotinamide is improving the epithelial state of these cells.
You know, it's funny. I wrote hard tumor down while we were talking, right? So we know things about solid tumors, and they upregulated fibrinogen, and that's what makes them so dense and hard. And it sounds to me that, you know, without saying anything about cancer, but it sounds to me that maybe nicotinamide, I want to say nicotinic acid all the time, nicotinamide may have a value in that. We know that vitamin C actually has a value, not curative, but vitamin C increases collagen production. Collagen production sequesters single cells so that they don't get land in tissue and plant themselves and start to grow. So there's all these different extrinsic things going on. So everybody's looking to cure cancer using intrinsic things, but there's all these extrinsic things. It sounds to me like the fibrinogen, the fibrotic process of a solid tumor may be a role for B3 in that as well.
Well, it is true that after bouts of chemo and radiotherapy, that there are some patients that go through NADIV treatment, and that improves their response to the chemotherapy, and suggest that they could be playing some benefit.
So a friend of mine who I value his brain, we had, so I was injecting NAD plus 100 milligrams a week, 4 doses of 25. And it's not that much really when you look at the IVs, but he and the reason I'm taking nicotinic acid today, again, I took it years ago because of the whole, you know, HDL, LDL balancing effects of it, and every statin drug in the world is held against niacin as the gold standard for managing dyslipidemia, but no one takes niacin for dyslipidemia except people who understand it. And so I stopped taking it a long time ago, but then we were talking and he said, you know, you may want to look deeper into the whole NAD synthesis process, because NAD is produced on demand and there are enzymes that get rid of it quickly as well as needed, and it's best produced intracellularly. And when you take the injection, there's no evidence that it's actually getting in the cell. It actually may stay outside the cell, and that may downregulate the production in the cell. He gave me all these things, and I thought, you know, damn it, yeah, I'm a huge fan of oh God, not ancestral, but of evolutionary science. I'm a big fan. Like, you know, while we try to do these things and outsmart nature, when we realized we should have just did what nature wanted. So I thought, well, I'm just going to start taking nicotinic acid again, let my body produce its own NAD on demand when it wants it, where it wants it, in the amounts that it wants it in. And so, you know, it's interesting because one of the things I learned about nicotinic acid back in 2007 when I did an interview with a scientist where we were looking at its effects on dyslipidemia, he pointed out that the potassium salts, the flush-free niacin, doesn't work in stimulating the receptor changes in the liver that increase HDL and lower LDL. And so I'm wondering, you're using real nicotinic acid, nicotinamide. You're not using a potassium salt or a flush-free version that's sold at Walgreens. I wonder if those versions even confer these types of benefits.
Right. I mean, it's definitely possible. Ultimately, anyone over the age of 35 is nicotinamide deficient. And I suspect as we get older, if we don't have the proper tools in our toolbox, we're not able to continue to maintain the repair at the homeostatic level. the optimal level, let's say, for your body. And so as we get older, if we don't have those supplies coming in, then the body just does what it can and focuses on what's important, and then leaves the things that are not as important aside and ignores them. So I think that it's good to provide your body with what is needed so that it has the necessary tools to combat whatever damage occurs. And so I think that likely is what explains the discrepancy between whether or not nicotinamide will increase or decrease sirtuin levels, right? So there's some controversy as to whether or not, it's beneficial or not. And I suspect that partially has to do with the fact that if a study is done in a mouse that's adolescent and not depleted of certain compounds, that's not going to have the same, you're not starting from the same health state as, say, an adult human over the age of 50. Right. And so perhaps some of the things are translatable, but not everything. And I suspect that some of the results that suggested that nicotinamide can inhibit sirtuin sirtuin levels likely has to do with that difference. And we have found, actually published in the previous paper, that in these old adult human RPE, when we provide nicotinamide, SIRT1 expression actually goes up.
Wow, that's exciting, because nicotinamide is so cheap. It's so cheap. I mean, it's just an easy thing for people to supplement with, to add a little extra to their diet that they're probably not getting in their diet anyway, because everybody's on some sort of restrictive diet, whether it's keto or vegan or, we're missing out on so many different things today. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into the study. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio.
Men and women, you've heard about hormone optimization. Do you feel like it's something you want to look into? RenewLifeRx.com is the place to start. Their doctors can help you with the solutions. RenewLifeRx.com has a simple process for lab work, consultation, and taking a deep dive into where your hormone levels can be improved. Superhuman Radio listeners get 30% off your initial lab work and consultation. Go to RenewLifeRx.com to schedule your no-obligation phone consultation today. Feel younger, get in better shape, and be more productive at RenewLifeRx.com.
How often do you sit with your laptop right on your lap? How much time do you spend on your cell phone? Are you in a technology-packed office Monday through Friday? Are you worried about this type of radiation? Now there's something you can do about it. GetLambs.com. This radiation has been linked to infertility in men, glandular tumors, gut microbiome dysbioses, and impaired sleep quality. Now you can provide 360-degree protection to at-risk parts of your body with radiation-proof apparel from GetLambs.com. Comfortable, breathable, and 99% effective. Go to GetLambs.com and use coupon code SHR for 20% off your order of $100 or more. That's GetLambs.com, GetLambs.com, and code SHR. Hey, this is Carl. For 14 years, you've heard me talk about Can-C eye drops, and they being the reason that I do not need reading glasses at now 61 years old. But I regularly get emails and messages from people who've been using Can-C and having some amazing results. Recently, I got an email from a fellow named Chad, who, because he was on dexamethasone eye drops for over 6 months, developed a cataract. Can-C eye drops actually reduced my cataract to the point where even my doctor has a hard time finding it. I will never stop using Can-C eye drops twice a day. I've been using them since 2008, he says. And you should be too. There is no better way to keep your eyes healthy and seeing clearly than Can-C eye drops. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com today and get on board, and we will both be looking into the future with very clear vision.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at Synthogen.com. Mass Prosynthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually, in the middle of a panic attack, I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Tim Blenkinsop. We're talking about niacin, a very inexpensive form of B3. It's hard to even find real niacin today at Walgreens or CVS because all they have is the flush-free niacin, which I am a big believer is not as valuable. And if you're worried about the flushing, just buy the time-release niacin, which uses gum to keep the powder stuck together so it takes longer to dissolve in your stomach and throughout your digestive tract. And you don't get the flushing because it just kind of leaches into you slowly. But I take 500 milligrams with breakfast, and I take 500 milligrams with the meal that I'll have at the end of today's show. And I've been doing it for other reasons, but I have a feeling that there's a lot more value to it than anyone invests in this very inexpensive form of B3. So I want to ask you, what was most surprising to you? What aha moment did you go, wow, we didn't expect that? I have a funny feeling it was the combination of the two, the 1 + 1 = 6 combination of the two inflammatory cytokines.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That when we found that the TGF beta and TNF alpha could produce such a big effect on the behavior of the cells, and that it resembled so closely the disease state, these contractile membranes that are detaching the retina, we really wanted to dig into what changes are occurring in the retinal pigment epithelium, and then find a compound that could reverse it. And so that was very surprising when we found that nicotinamide can reverse an epithelial to mesenchymal transition. When we first found that nicotinamide inhibited the EMT, that was exciting. And it was sort of, I was just sort of going out on a limb saying, okay, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Shot in the dark. Let's see if we can reverse this transition. And when I saw that it was reversing within 1 month, that was very exciting.
So when it reverses, do we see some sort of autophagy taking away the unwanted tissue and ending up with a nice flat layer of epithelial cells again?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that we were really interested in studying. We haven't really dug deep into autophagy yet, but that is one of the directions that our lab is headed. I think that the changes that occurred was, it relates to how the cells change in the first place. So transcription factors really drive the gene expression changes. And so 2 of the transcription factors that are most well known in an epithelial to mesenchymal transition is snail and slug. And so we were monitoring these genes
Those are great
And
names, right? They go
yeah,
together. Snails and slugs. A snail has a home, a slug doesn't.
and in fact, those genes, the changes in those genes go together as well. And so we found that when we treat with TGF-beta, TNF-alpha, snail and slug transcription factors will go up dramatically. And then when we add nicotinamide, those genes just shut down very dramatically. And instead, the genes that are responsible for retina physiology and retina function, which include two transcription factors, MITF and OTX2, those genes returned as well when we add nicotinamide. So it's not just a generic epithelium. It reverts back to its original epithelial identity. And so that's remarkable. And for something so commonplace, like, we have to remember that nicotinamide is upstream of so many processes, which includes fatty acid synthesis and nucleic acid synthesis, both RNA and DNA. So it's a very general thing. It's almost as ubiquitous as ATP, and for it to have the ability to reverse the identity back into the original state, it not only shows that our epigenetic state, there are still marks that are persistent, that once you move towards a mesenchymal type state, you still have some epigenetic marks that are telling the cell, you're still an RPE. You may be a sick RPE, but you're still RPE. And if you get provided with the right nutrition, you're going to go back. And that's exactly what it does.
Wow, that's fascinating. Now that's fascinating. Could B3 be mislabeled? Could it be an enzyme?
No, but the enzymes that work on nicotinamide definitely play a major role in its the presence of it for NAD synthesis. And I think that the relative expression levels of these enzymes, and not only within the cells, but also in the blood, also plays a major role in how NAD levels help to maintain homeostasis in our cells. And I think that the general supply of these ingredients really drive the expression of these enzymes.
How long did it take for you to start to see these changes once the nicotinamide was introduced?
Yeah, so it depends on which experiment. If we are just taking cells from the human eye and trying to plate them, what we found is instantaneously, if we add nicotinamide, the number of cells that survive and attach to the plate increases dramatically from, let's say, 10% to 40%.
What is that an indicator of when they take to the plate so easily?
And I think that it's an indicator of their health. One of the main things that we are starting to observe is that with nicotinamide, these retinal pigment epithelial cells start to increase their mitochondrial biogenesis. So that these are the engines of the cell. And so once you have more mitochondria available, then you can start producing much more energy, and just the energy by itself will enable the cells to respond and try to perform things that it would otherwise not try to perform. And I think that is a really exciting pathway alongside autophagy that is playing a role in restoring these cells. And so I think that was the first really big surprise, that basically within 24 hours, giving the cells, and probably faster, giving the cells nicotinamide will allow them to survive and regain their identity.
Now, what about the transition of going from a mesenchymal cell back to
Right. Yeah. So that is a little slower process, and I think that a lot of things have to be done for nicotinamide to really reverse it, and that takes about 1 month
That's not
for
long.
a good.
That's not long.
Yeah.
A lot of these wonderful therapies, like we did a show on a peptide called sabinitide, which actually at 4 milligrams a day for 28 days caused neuronal sprouting in all tissue, from the cornea to the epidermis and everywhere else. And so I was so excited about this peptide because I thought, if you've ever owned an old car and the wire harness starts to wear, and all of a sudden dielectric failure happens, and every time you turn left, your windshield wipers turn on. The body kind of goes through that as you age with the nervous system. I thought, could you imagine literally like regrowing your nervous system? Well, I was so excited about it, and a lot of people were, and some people used it, and they saw some changes, but the changes weren't dramatic. And then I realized, wait, if you don't remove the insult first, then the net changes may be nothing at all, because while you're fixing it, it's breaking it again. And so, when people hear this sort of stuff, they think, okay, I'm just going to take nicotinic acid and this problem is going to go away. Not if you're still insulting the tissue and causing the problem. It may get a little better, but it's not going to be in a month. It may take 10 years because you break it a little. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back every single day, right?
Yeah, definitely that's the case, I think. Yeah. And it always depends on where you're starting from, the starting state. So if you are already in having diabetes and hypertension, it may take a little longer for you to reverse some of the damage. But it all depends.
So mitochondrial biogenesis is a fascinating thing, right? Because we've done shows on mitofarming, all the things you can do, extreme exercise, but not too far where you're causing your body to break down more. And so when you say mitochondrial biogenesis, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I would imagine it's not exclusive to just the eye, the mitochondrial biogenesis that could be affected from B3.
Yeah, no, I think that it's likely that any cell that is in a stress state and not without the proper nutrients will have some inefficiencies in their mitochondria. Either they don't have enough, or the mitochondrial DNA has been damaged, and so it doesn't perform as efficiently. Also, the membrane resistance is very important for it to be able to produce energy efficiently. And so when it's not in the highest performing, then the membrane resistance drops, which means that it's a little leaky, and so it cannot produce as much ATP. And all of these these deficits add up to not being able to keep up with what your body demands. And if nicotinamide is growing new mitochondria and their mitochondrial membrane resistance is improving, then you're going to become more efficient and you're going to be able to repair more damage than without it.
We're going to take our last. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No problem. I was just going to say, so perhaps to go back to those the neurogenesis that you were mentioning, it may be that these proteins are providing signals to do something, and they do it partially as much as they could with the supplies given, but perhaps with the proper nutrition they would be able to do more.
Right. No, I agree. I want to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the interview. Stay tuned. You're listening to Superhuman Radio. You're watching us on Facebook. We probably have time for one more question, too, if somebody wants to post one. We'll be right back. Redcon One is one of the fastest growing supplement companies in the world today. That's because they produce supplements that deliver on their promises. From their flagship pre-workout Total War to their innovative whole food MREs and bars. Now you can get the deepest discount ever offered to any audience anywhere. Use code SHR and get 25% off all Redcon One products today. SHR and 25% off. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com. Crank your muscle gains to new heights by transforming every gram of protein you eat into 3 grams with Masszymes. With 100,000 HUTs of protease per capsule, Masszymes increases your absorption of key amino acids, resulting in stronger, healthier digestion of proteins and certain vitamins that not only multiplies the impact of the protein you eat, but can also repair a damaged intestinal wall. Go to Masszymes/SHR for 10% off. That's MASSZYMES.com/SHR.
7,451. That's how many people kick the bucket, buy the farm, or cash in their chips every day in the United States. Yep, that means 5 people are going to meet their maker during this commercial. And no, our commercials are not the cause. Half of those who punch the clock for the final time will do so without life insurance. Call Big Lou at Term Provider before you are number 7452. If you're a 50-year-old male, a tad porky with a touch of diabetes, $1 million of term life insurance may only cost about $200 a month. With more verified 5-star reviews than any other Lou on the radio, Big Lou has saved thousands of people thousands on their term insurance premiums. Stop procrastinating and call Big Lou today at 800-560-0301. 800-560-0301. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He doesn't want to be number 7,452. Call 800-560-0301 or biglou.com.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. You know, I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, you know, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do those with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. You've heard about blood flow restriction training since 2006 on SHR, but you're still on the fence. Well, here's the push. BFR is more effective at building muscle than anabolic steroids. That's right, I went there, but it's because it's the truth. My experience with the Be Strong blood flow restriction system is proof to me, and now I'm asking myself why I waited so long. You'll see undeniable changes in the targeted muscles in days and weeks like nothing you've ever tried before. I will never stop using them. Give Be Strong a try. Go to BStrong.training/super-human and use code SHR for 10% off.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Tim Blenkinsop. We're talking about nicotinic acid, niacin, a B3 vitamin, and really, while this show focuses on tissue and the etiology of disease states in the eye, it can probably safely be taken as having these types of effects throughout the entire body, which I really am excited about this discussion, especially when you start talking about mitochondrial biogenesis. So this study obviously was completed how long ago?
This was just published in this month, at the beginning of April. This study basically span, I would say, 5 years of work. And, you know, I have to thank the people who were responsible for this. First off, my mentor, Sally Temple, who's also a senior co-author of this paper, but also Marie Fernandez, Nathan Bowles, Lauren Schiff, Bar Nakmani, and Zebitz Erickson, and Jen Mitsenai are some of the main people that drove this research, along with our collaborator, Joanna Visoska, who did a lot of the epigenetic analysis and sequencing.
And was this done over there at Mount Sinai, the facility there, or?
Yeah, so it spanned 3 locations, Icahn School of Medicine on Mount Sinai, the Neural Stem Cell Institute, and Stanford University.
Very exciting. It's
Yeah.
really, it's much more exciting. I know your focus is on, diseases of the eye, but I am so happy that I've been taking 1,000 milligrams of nicotinic acid a day for about the past month, and I'll continue to take it. Do you take niacin? Just curious.
I do take niacinamide, yes.
So how much do you
and
take?
I think that, I take 500 milligrams, just a little extra, because I know it'll, I'm 43 years old. I'm sure I'm deficient of niacinamide, so might as well give my body a little extra. But, there a lot of the nicotinamide, molecules like nicotinamide mononucleotide, nicotinamide riboside, I think all of these are beneficial.
So we know that the couple interesting things that niacin does, especially if it's the type that makes you flush, it causes a rapid release of one of the prostaglandins that's associated with allergic reactions. And if you take it daily, you notice, hey, I don't get flushed anymore. And that's because these prostaglandins that are sitting around waiting for something to do, they live in a pool. And once you deplete that pool, they're not as reactive. And a lot of people who take niacin without recognizing this isn't why they take it, about 2 or 3 months into it, they start going, my allergies don't bother me anymore. So there seems to have an ability on overreactive immune systems, which pretty much is a problem in our population today. When you look at the vast number of disease states that can be correlated back to autoimmunity, which is an immune system that's gone awry. Have you noticed any of those changes at all?
I have seen, not personally myself, but I have seen publications that suggest that nicotinamide may improve conditions in autoimmune diseases.
And the other thing that's fascinating to me is its role on the microvasculature of the body. Everybody knows that when you get flush, what's happening is, blood flow is increasing all the way out to the periphery of the body. And, some people get flush just on their face and their back. But, if you take it long enough, you start to notice that your skin quality changes. And I attribute that to it actually helps to dilate these very, very small blood vessels in the body. And those very, very small blood vessels in the body have been assigned now to the development of what used to be called diabetic neuropathy, but now is idiopathic neuropathy. And that's because these blood vessels are responsible for feeding nerves. And, when you were a kid and you sat down on your leg and watched a really good movie, you got up an hour later and your leg was asleep, it's numb, then it hurts because the blood flow starts to, that's the blood flow regained that's feeding these nerves. And now they're saying, a lot of this neuropathy is from diminishing blood flow to those small blood vessels. And niacin has the ability to reverse that over time.
Yeah, it makes sense that if the blood vessels become dilated, then there's going to be increased oxygen to those regions. And of course, that will be good for those cells.
This is fascinating. Are you already working on your next study?
Next studies, yes. So we're doing a deeper dive on mitochondrial biogenesis. We want to understand what are the key components that are responsible for nicotinamide to produce such a large effect on the number and the quality of mitochondria. And we are zeroing in on PGC1 alpha and trying to see whether that is responsible, or at least playing a role in driving that.
I wish that you would consider moving forward, looking at all of these cases and therapeutic approaches, both in the open environment or in radio-free rooms where frequency is completely filtered out. I have a funny feeling you're going to see something. I don't know what it's going to be, but I just know that incident RF that we're surrounded in today is playing a role on a cellular level. Now, who knows? Maybe it's good. Maybe we're going to be endowed with some superpower someday. I don't know. But But right now, I think a lot of it is bad. And as we talked at the beginning of the show, when Motorola, when I was in the cellular telephone business, we went to a land mobile radio show in Las Vegas. I was based in Las Vegas, so it was easy. We just drove over. And so I was talking to the Motorola, one of the engineers that actually worked on the original cellular system that was launched in Chicago for Central Telephone of Chicago. And, we were talking about the cell phone, and why it had that big mast and then that tiny little quarter wave, because 800 megahertz antenna is only about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. That's all it has to be. That's either a quarter wave or half wavelength. And he said because Motorola knew from their experience with trunking radios, which used those same frequencies, but they were push-to-talk type radios, that RF in that range caused hyperoxidation of the crystalline lens in the eye. And they were afraid that over time it would lead to premature cataracts, and they didn't want mounting lawsuits to come out. And this is before we had all these class action attorneys advertising on TV. Did your toilet paper give you a hemorrhoid? Join the lawsuit. And so and that's when it dawned on me that this is before I even got into the conscious effort to improve my own health. It was like, wow, RF does something to you that you don't see, you don't know. It's like magic. It's happening. And when we talk about fibrotic tissue, earlier you said, well, you do know cataracts is kind of a fibrotic process, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly right, that this is a fibrosis of the lens. And I can't really speak to the frequencies, but I'm sure there are studies out that will suggest some of those points that perhaps certain frequencies can induce a stress response in the cells.
Yeah, they're finding out that non-ionizing radiation actually has an effect now, and there's several good studies out there. I want to thank you so much for making time to come on the show. This is fascinating stuff.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Take care, and please keep me. You have Elisa's email address, so yes. Just keep us abreast of studies, and we'll get you back on the air right away.
Happy to.
Thank you. Stay safe in New York.
Thank you. Yeah, everyone's safe and healthy.
Take care. All right, so that's it for today's interview. I don't have anything else. I hope you got something out of it. I think everybody should be taking niacin. I have to tell you something. You can get the time-release niacin, not the prescription sustained release. That's different. Niaspan is by prescription, and it actually has a great deal of hepatic stress. It hurts the liver over time. But plain old cheap nicotinic acid in a time-released version. They come in 500 milligram caplets. A lot of companies make it. Start taking it with a meal. 500 milligrams a day. Make sure you don't. Now, sometimes those time-release capsules, the caplets, they will break down faster than they're supposed to, and you'll get it. Last night, I happened to be talking to Elisa about it. I saw my niacin caplet that I took with dinner tonight actually must have released too fast because I'm getting this warm sensation on my face and my upper chest, but it goes away in a couple minutes and you know what it's from. So it's not like you're freaking out like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm dying. But I think that people should start considering supplementing with niacin. I've taken as much as 1,500 milligrams a day, but right now I'm on 1,000. 2 times a day, I take 500 milligrams. And who knew that it increases sirtuins? That means it has some sort of anti-aging benefit. Mitochondrial biogenesis. Oh my God, that's exciting. So I think it's worthy of your investigation, especially if you're older like me. I'm old. I never thought of myself as old, but all of a sudden I got here. All right, that's it for today. Tomorrow is the Blueprint Power Hour. And then Elisa Profumo has great shows planned for the rest of the week. We're going to start doing because she's getting so good at booking these interviews in advance, we're going to start going back to having a show program on the website so people can go and look and see what shows are playing this week so that they can make their effort to make sure that they listen to them. All right, see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching and listening. And those of you who participated in the Facebook Live, thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow.